We are back with Warren Buffett. We've got a lot of viewer emails that have been coming in. We've got thousands of them, so we're going to get to those right away. But, Warren, you had one thing you wanted to clarify?
Well, I was going to mention to Joe that you've heard this comment recently by some Democrats that a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. Now, just rephrase that, and since it's, in my view, it's an economic war. I don't think anybody on December 7th would have said a war is a terrible thing to waste, and therefore we're going to try and ram through a whole bunch of things. But we expect the other party to unite behind us on the big problem. It's just a mistake, I think, when you've got one overriding objective to try and muddle it up with a bunch of other things.
Okay, so that's your point, is that on both sides people should be coming back in.
Absolutely, we need them. We need them.
Okay, let's get to some of these viewer emails because we do have a lot of them that have come in. Steve from Minneapolis writes in, and his question is, do you believe that the following statement is still true today? So far as I can discover, paper money systems have always wound up with collapse and economic chaos. By the way, that was a statement from Congressman Howard Buffett.
Sounds like my dad, yeah. I heard that every night at the dinner table for a long time. Well, I would say this, it's going to be a very, very rare paper money that appreciates over time. I mean, and we are doing things now that are potentially very inflationary. I mean, it's the nature of fighting the war we're in. And incidentally, when we fought World War II, it was very inflationary, and we took all kinds of activities to try and minimize that impact. But you know, if you look at this bill, and I didn't know Steve was going to ask you that, but you know, on the back it says, "In God we trust," right? And on the front it says, "In the Federal Reserve we trust." Basically, it's the Federal Reserve note. Now, if you get on the Federal Reserve Bank and you say, "I'd like to exchange this for something else," the nice lady there will say, "Would you like what is it, 2 10s or 4 5s?" I mean, it is paper money, and if you keep issuing more of it, and M2 has been growing very rapidly. You can go to the Federal Reserve site and see that, and should be in a period like this. But that is inflationary. The more of these you have out compared to the economic activity, the less it's worth. And
all right. Well, let me jump ahead based on that, before I take it from you. Let's jump ahead. Guys in the control room, this may throw you off a little bit. We're going to go to number 33. This is from Joey in Brooklyn, New York, and I want to ask this question because it plays into what you just talked about. He asks, do you think that the inflation of the late 1970s was worse than the inflation we are about to have? Why or why not?
Well, it depends on the wisdom of federal policies, but because what we do with the money supply and how we behave later in relation to what we're creating now will determine the answer to that. It certainly has the potential of being worse. We are fighting a big war, and we're going to use money to fight it. And the whole world is leveraging down. The only party that can leverage up is the U.S. government. They have the ability to take on anything because they can print money as long as people will do business in U.S. dollars. So it could be worse. And you know, in economics, there's no free lunch. Right. There's still lunches it's better to have, even if you're going to pay later. I mean, it's better than no lunch, even if you have to pay for the lunch. And we are going to attempt to have a lunch that, to some extent, we're going to pay for later.
All right. We have more questions from people wondering what all that inflation means. We'll get to that in the next hour on what that means for the markets and some of their investments. But meantime, Carmen from New York writes in. He says, do you believe that the ratings agencies could have single-handedly prevented the current financial turmoil by refusing to rate the exotic products coming out of Wall Street that they apparently did not understand?
It would have helped a lot. But the rating agencies were populated by people who believed exactly what you and I did. You know, all of the people that come to Nebraska Furniture Mart, and the people that are in Washington, and when Congress was urging Fannie and Freddie to expand their activities, everybody believed house prices would never take a real tumble, and that got built into what the rating agencies did as well. But there's no question that if somebody there had taken a stand, for some reason they would have been derided for that stand. But if they'd taken a stand and said, we're going to assume that house prices can fall 25 or 30%, and therefore we have to rate the stuff all differently, it would have been. They probably would have gone to the other rating agencies and got it anyway. People wouldn't have accepted it, but they made a mistake in rating them the way they did.
All right. T. Tidwell from Louisville, Kentucky writes in and wants to know, what one thing have you resigned yourself to be a shocking probable truth in 2009 that investors would certainly be surprised about right now? It's a tough one.
Yeah, I wish I knew. I mean, I'd be acting on it now. No, I think most people's expectations about 2009. Well, I would say this. I would say to the extent that I think we already have the policies in place, but to the extent they get communicated better, it will help. But the banking system, if properly handled, is not going to. That's not going to be the problem for the economy. Fear that the banking system may be a problem enters into how the economy behaves. But we have a system that can take care of the banks, and most of the banks are in pretty good shape.
So would the one shocking truth potentially be things wind up being better than people expect?
Or you wouldn't go that far? No, I won't go that far. Okay.